It's time I finally got around to talking about a series I've loved since the first time I'd ever picked up a controller. I'm of course talking about the classic arcade beat-em-up series, Double Dragon. When most people my age tell you the first game they remember playing, it's usually either Super Mario Bros., Duck Hunt, or Sonic the Hedgehog. For me, it was Double Dragon 2 on the NES. I remember my mom coming home one day super excited to show me what she had just bought. A brand new NES with Super Mario Bros., Duck Hunt, and Double Dragon 2. You see, like a lot of typical moms, my mom always did that mom thing where she was kind of oblivious to gaming. So despite it advertising right there on the box that the NES came with 2 pack-in games, my mom had no clue and didn't want to buy the console without a game to play. Why she chose Double Dragon 2 I have no idea, but as soon as my parents figured out how to hook that bad boy up, we popped in Double Dragon 2 and both our minds were blown by that incredible title screen. I don't remember if I was player 1 or player 2, but it didn't matter. My mom's game where you beat guys up was instantly the coolest thing I had ever experienced at that age. In fact, it could be a combination of Double Dragon and all the 80s and 90s action movies that my dad watched that eventually made me fall in love with the martial arts as well. But we can talk about that another time. After all the hype and build-up for Double Dragon 2, my mom and I could never actually get past this first ledge in Mission 1 because I wasn't old enough to read the manual yet and we couldn't figure out how to jump. But we didn't care. We would just reset the stage and beat the crap out of every baddie all over again. This was the game that got me into gaming, and eventually I would play through pretty much every version of every single game in the Double Dragon series, including the game that kinda started it all, Renegade. Renegade was the start of the Kunio-kun franchise, a series of games I would later discover and fall in love with as well. It was a clunky-ass short beat-em-up game about a vigilante who would beat up street thugs. I've played this game a few times, and despite it having a decent amount in common with the Double Dragon games, it just never really clicked with me. Now, like I said, Double Dragon 2 on the NES was the first game I'd ever played, so of course, that was the first Double Dragon game I'd played as well. Little did I know that the first Double Dragon was originally an arcade game where 2 players would take on the Black Warriors gang to rescue the girl of their dreams, Marion, then eventually have to fight each other to decide who gets the damsel in distress. Double Dragon was one of, if not the first highly successful game in the 2-player beat-em-up genre, and even to this day, it still plays fairly well, and is fun as all hell with a second player. There were multiple ports to home console, some good, some not great. Whoever thought that they should try making an Atari version of Double Dragon may have been out of their mind, but in all honesty, it is kind of impressive that they are able to do it at all. The most popular version of the original Double Dragon, at least where I grew up, was on the NES. I still remember my first time playing it, being completely dumbfounded by the fact that it was a single-player game. How could a game called Double Dragon be a single-player experience? I don't know if it was difficult to make it a co-op game that early on the NES, or if they were just super lazy when it came to making the port, but the game overall is actually really good. It has the same plot as the arcade version for the most part, but you're playing as Billy, and you get to traverse multiple stages on your journey to rescue Marion and beat down the Black Warriors. The little details like climbing fences, picking up enemies' weapons to use against them, and knocking enemies off ledges to their doom were all really cool to me. Double Dragon 1, like 2 and 3 on the NES, was really fucking hard, but if you get to the end, you find out that you actually have to fight your brother, just like in the arcade game, in order to get Marion and save the day. There were a lot of little strange changes from the arcade game, but like most NES variants of the arcade games, the changes worked on the system and made for a classic, tight beat-em-up that is still fun to play to this day. Probably one of the strangest additions to the NES version of Double Dragon was Mode B. Mode B was essentially an early fighting game style versus mode where you pick which character you'd like to play as, then fight 1v1 against a clone of yourself. This mode sported much higher detailed sprites of the characters and kinda got you to know and appreciate each of the characters a little bit better. I honestly think the characters of Double Dragon are a big part of why the series was so successful. Even though the beat-em-up genre would be filled with better games later on, like the Streets of Rage series for example, none of the other games had a villainous character nearly as well known as my boy Abobo from Double Dragon. Abobo, Roper, Linda, Chin, and other great Double Dragon characters would return in many of the game's sequels, and this character recognition went a long way in building the Double Dragon brand. They all had their own unique look and played a little differently as well. So despite my initial impressions of Double Dragon on the NES being soured, I eventually grew to love this game as many of the other kids my age did. But enough about the home console port that most people played growing up. How was Double Dragon on the lesser known 8-bit Sega console, the Master System? My favorite port of the original Double Dragon was definitely the one on the Sega Master System. Allowing for full 2-player co-op and having a difficulty that makes the game much more possible to beat, while still giving enough challenge. Double Dragon on the Master System is quite possibly my favorite game in the entire series. The colors popped compared to the dark orange, brown, and blue style of the NES version, and the co-op gameplay just added so much to the experience. The game itself was a lot closer to that of the arcade version while still knowing its limits. When beating the Master System version with a friend after taking down the final boss, you then had to fight each other to see who's the lucky guy who gets to take home Marion. The teamwork, stage design, and increased amount of action really puts this game leagues ahead of the NES version for me, despite them both being very good, but very different games. There was also a Game Boy and a Genesis port. The Game Boy version was based off the NES game, and was fairly similar, although toned down to match the capabilities of the Game Boy. The Genesis version tried to be a direct port of the arcade version, but in my opinion failed in almost every way. The controls felt incredibly sloppy, and the music was god-awful. When the Game Boy port is better than the Genesis port in every single way, it's time to just cut your losses and pack her in. There were a few other ports that were fairly terrible, like the ones on the Game Gear and Atari Lynx, but the last version of Double Dragon 1 I'm going to be talking about is the modern remake of the game on the Game Boy Advance. Double Dragon Advance is more or less a perfect remake of the arcade version, but with some modern quality of life improvements added to the game. The new art style looks great, yet still suits the original, and the game plays fantastic. The game does offer 2-player co-op, but both you and your friend have to own the game, a GBA, and a link cable in order to play this way. It's a bit of a bummer that what's seen by many as the best version of the original Double Dragon is on a handheld platform where co-op gameplay is the most inconvenient. There are 2 single-player modes, Dragon and Double Dragon. Double Dragon is super weird. You do have Billy and Jimmy, but you have to press select to switch between them. I honestly did not like this mode at all. I also found the difficulty of this game to be ridiculous when playing by myself. Even on the easiest setting, you'll find yourself getting pinned in the corner while everyone on screen gangs up on you. If you have a Game Boy Advance and love Double Dragon, pick it up, but be warned it can be incredibly unfair and difficult at times. The updates to the visuals, as well as the nice changes to the story to make it suit the story of the other games, are well worth it in the end. Well, that's pretty much all I have to say about the original Double Dragon and its various ports. Be sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss part 2 where I talk about the game that welcomed me into the world of gaming, Double Dragon 2 and some of its ports. I really hope you enjoyed this video as I plan on covering the entire Double Dragon series and move on to other franchises as well. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you in Franchise Flashback Double Dragon Part 2.